Ethan slumped into the worn leather seat of Lucas's car, grateful for the warmth against the chilly evening air. The family gathering had stretched longer than expected, filled with awkward small talk and laughter that sometimes felt too loud. He hadn't wanted to ask for a ride, but Lucas had insisted, waving him over with a grin that was both familiar and infuriatingly easygoing. "You look like you need this more than anyone else here," Lucas teased, slapping the dashboard lightly as he adjusted the rear-view mirror. Ethan offered a weak smile, not quite meeting his cousin's eyes. There was something about Lucas, his confidence, his casual charm, that always seemed to throw Ethan off balance. Even after years of knowing him, the car rolled into the quiet streets, the city lights flickering past like fleeting thoughts. Ethan stared out the window, watching reflections ripple across the glass, wondering if he should speak or just sink into silence. Lucas hummed along to a song on the radio, one that Ethan didn't recognize, the notes curling around the corners of the car and settling in a strangely comforting way. "So," Lucas began after a moment, his voice breaking the soft hum of the engine, "how are things, with her?" The question was casual, but Ethan's stomach nodded. He hadn't expected Lucas to ask, and the phrasing suggested a depth beyond polite curiosity. Ethan exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the seatbelt. "It's complicated," he admitted. He had wanted to avoid this, but Lucas had a way of drawing things out, of noticing what others missed. Ethan glanced at him briefly, seeing a softness there that rarely appeared around others. Lucas nodded, eyes on the road. "I get it. Relationships can be messy. Or boring. Or both at the same time," he said, chuckling lightly. Ethan couldn't help but smile, even if it was just a reflex. There was something reassuring in the way Lucas spoke, as if he understood even without needing all the details. The conversation drifted naturally after that, family updates, shared memories from childhood, jokes that only they found funny. Yet beneath the casual banter, a subtle tension lingered. Ethan noticed how Lucas's gaze lingered for a fraction longer when he laughed, how a hand brushed absent-mindedly against his own arm when reaching for a cup from the center console. Small things, but they stirred a flutter in his chest he wasn't entirely prepared to analyze. Ethan tried to focus on the scenery outside, streetlights reflecting off puddles, the neon glow of a late-night diner, but Lucas's presence made it impossible to think clearly. He caught himself wondering if this was normal for cousins, if others experienced these undercurrents of something more. The thought made him uneasy, yet undeniably curious. "You've been quiet," Lucas observed, breaking the lull that had fallen between them. "Thinking about something, or someone?" The question was teasing, but not cruel, and it made Ethan's heart skip. He shifted uncomfortably, unsure how much to reveal. "Just stuff," he muttered, eyes dropping to his lap. A part of him longed to speak, to test the waters of this unexpected closeness, but another part recoiled at the possibility of saying the wrong thing. Lucas seemed to sense it, smiling softly without pressing further, letting the moment breathe. For a while, the silence was companionable, filled with unspoken words and shared glances. The road stretched ahead, empty except for the occasional passing car. Then, just as Ethan began to relax, Lucas's voice broke through again, gentler this time, a touch more serious. "You ever feel like people don't see you, the way you really are?" The question wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but Ethan felt it land squarely on him. He swallowed hard, unsure why his chest felt tight, why the world outside the car seemed to fade into shadows and light. Ethan wanted to answer carefully, to navigate the thin line between honesty and caution. Yet he also sensed that this was one of those rare moments where a single conversation could change everything, if he allowed it. Lucas glanced at him briefly, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Ethan felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety settle in. Whatever conversation was coming next, it would demand honesty, and perhaps courage, that he hadn't yet summoned, and as the car continued to glide through the quiet streets, Ethan realized this ride home was no longer just a simple favor. It had become the start of something unexpected. The hum of the truck's engine was steady, a low heartbeat in the quiet night. The world outside was drowned in rain and fog, leaving only the small cabin lit by the faint glow of the dashboard. Daniel sat still, his hands folded, eyes tracing the wiper's rhythm. Lucas reached forward and turned the heater a little higher. The air grew warmer, heavy with unspoken words. Neither man spoke for a while. The silence wasn't awkward, it was the kind that allowed thoughts to surface slowly, like bubbles rising from deep water. Finally, Lucas broke it. "You look like you've been carrying a lot for a long time." Daniel gave a weak smile. "Maybe I have. Or maybe I just forgot how to put it down." Lucas nodded, his gaze fixed on the rain-streaked windshield. "The road does that to people. Makes them think, sometimes too much." Daniel leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. "It's not just the road. It's home. Ethan, my husband, he's different now. Or maybe I am. We don't talk anymore. Not about real things. We just exist beside each other." His voice faltered. "Some nights, I feel like a ghost in my own life." Lucas didn't rush to fill the silence. He simply listened, the way few people do. His hands rested on the steering wheel, relaxed yet grounded. "I know what that feels like," he said softly. "I was with someone once. 8 years. Then one day, she stopped seeing me. I was still there, but it was like I'd turned invisible." Daniel glanced at him, surprised by the quiet vulnerability in his tone. "So what did you do?" Lucas exhaled. "At first, I tried harder. Brought flowers, cooked dinners, planned trips. But the more I tried to hold on, the more she slipped away. Eventually, I stopped trying. That's when I realized love can die quietly, no arguments, no betrayal, just silence." Daniel nodded slowly. "Silence can kill more than words ever could." The rain softened into a steady drizzle. Lucas turned down the radio, and a faint tune played, a slow, nostalgic song. Daniel recognized it immediately. It was one he and Ethan used to listen to when they first moved in together, long before responsibilities and routines stole their time. The melody pulled at something deep inside him. He looked away, blinking against the sting in his eyes. Lucas noticed but said nothing. He reached behind the seat and pulled out a thermos, pouring 2 small cups of coffee. "Here," he said. "It's not diner quality, but it helps." Daniel accepted the cup. Their fingers brushed briefly, and that small, accidental contact sent a quiet current through the space. He felt both comforted and unsettled. There was no desire in it, only the kind of connection that comes from being understood when you least expect it. That he stared at the steam curling from the coffee. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured. Lucas tilted his head. "Why not?" "Because it feels like I'm looking for something I shouldn't be." Lucas took a slow sip before answering. "Maybe you're not looking for something wrong. Maybe you're just tired of pretending everything's right." Daniel let out a shaky breath. The words hit harder than he expected. For months, he had carried his loneliness like a secret burden, afraid to admit how empty things had become. Now, in this quiet truck cabin, it felt safe to let the truth breathe. "I miss being seen," Daniel confessed. "Not for what I do, not for what I provide, just for who I am. With Ethan, I feel like I've disappeared. And I don't even know if he notices." Lucas's expression softened. "You deserve to be seen. Everyone does." For a while, neither of them spoke. The world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only 2 souls suspended in the glow of a dashboard light. The intimacy wasn't physical, it was emotional, raw, and real. It was the kind of honesty Daniel hadn't shared in years. Lucas leaned back, eyes on the road ahead though they weren't moving. "You know," he said quietly, "the hardest part of being lonely is realizing it's possible to feel that way even when someone loves you." Daniel turned to him, the truth of that sentence sinking deep. He wanted to respond, to say something meaningful, but his voice failed him. All he managed was a quiet, "Yeah." Minutes passed. The rain stopped. The night outside was still, the air washed clean. Daniel felt lighter and heavier all at once, unburdened, yet exposed. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, only that this conversation would not leave him unchanged. Lucas finally spoke again, his tone softer now. You don't owe me an explanation for anything. But sometimes, talking to a stranger helps us hear ourselves better. Daniel smiled faintly. You're not a stranger anymore. Lucas's gaze lingered on him for a moment, then drifted back to the windshield. Then let's just say this, whatever happens after tonight, make sure it brings you peace, not regret. Daniel didn't answer. The truck cabin fell quiet again, filled only with the hum of the heater and the soft ticking of the cooling rain. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to feel, really feel, the weight of the night pressing gently around him, and as dawn began to whisper against the horizon, one thought echoed through his mind: sometimes, the heart finds its truth in the most unexpected places. The hum of the engine had slowed, the quiet street stretching ahead like an unspoken question. Ethan's thoughts were a tangle of what Lucas had just said, swirling with memories, realizations, and a rush of emotions he couldn't quite name. He kept his hands clasped in his lap, as if holding onto them would steady the sudden turbulence inside him. Lucas glanced at him briefly, reading the storm behind Ethan's eyes. You've been quiet, he said softly, almost tenderly. Ethan exhaled, realizing how loudly his chest felt, how undeniable the emotions were. The conversation they'd shared lingered in the air like the faint scent of rain, leaving everything familiar slightly altered. I didn't expect this, Ethan admitted, voice low. I didn't expect to feel any of this. He avoided looking at Lucas directly, afraid that one glance might give away the whirlwind of thoughts he hadn't fully processed. Lucas's expression softened, patient and non-judgmental, giving Ethan the space to confront what he had been hiding, even from himself. Lucas nodded, a small, understanding smile tugging at his lips. Sometimes, the unexpected is exactly what we need to see ourselves clearly, he said, keeping his tone gentle, almost coaxing. We spend so long hiding pieces of ourselves that we forget they exist. Ethan's stomach nodded at the truth in those words, realizing that Lucas had always been more perceptive than he allowed himself to admit. The car turned a corner, the familiar sights of Ethan's neighborhood coming into view. He felt a pang of reality. This ride would end soon, and with it, the immediacy of this conversation. A part of him wished it could last forever, a small sanctuary where words could be honest, and feelings could breathe. I never realized, Ethan said finally, his voice trembling slightly, how much I care about someone, and that it could be right here, in front of me. His eyes flicked to Lucas, fleeting, hesitant, unsure if he should go further. Lucas didn't reply immediately. He merely offered a small nod, silent encouragement, letting Ethan weigh the meaning of his own words without interruption. Ethan's mind replayed years of subtle interactions, moments he had dismissed as family teasing or casual banter, now cast in a different light. Every shared laugh, every glance that lingered a fraction too long, every small touch that seemed accidental, all of it suddenly made sense. His heart ached with longing, tinged with fear of what this meant, and yet, he felt a quiet thrill at the clarity it brought. Lucas broke the silence, his voice gentle but steady. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. Feelings aren't questions you answer immediately. They're discoveries you make, slowly, carefully. Ethan nodded, appreciating the wisdom in the words, but the knowledge didn't quiet the storm inside him. As the car approached Ethan Street, he realized that the ride had become more than a favor. It had become a turning point, a confrontation with truths he could no longer ignore. His mind raced with possibilities, with what-ifs that stretched beyond family ties and societal expectations. Yet beneath the uncertainty, a strange clarity emerged. He had glimpsed something authentic, something worth exploring, even if the path forward remained unclear. Lucas slowed the car to a stop outside Ethan's home, the engine's gentle purr filling the space between them. Ethan's fingers lingered on the door handle, hesitant to step out, reluctant to leave the moment behind. He glanced at Lucas, who met his gaze steadily, a reassuring presence in the quiet night. Thanks, for tonight, Ethan said softly, his voice layered with gratitude and something more, an unspoken acknowledgement of the depth this conversation had reached. Lucas's smile widened just slightly. Anytime, he replied. Remember, Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set us free. Ethan stepped out of the car, the cool night air brushing against his skin. He closed the doors softly behind him, the sound echoing like a punctuation mark on an evening that would remain etched in his memory. As he walked toward his front door, he felt a mixture of anticipation, fear, and hope, emotions he hadn't allowed himself to name until tonight that he paused at the steps, glancing back once more at Lucas, who remained in the driver's seat, watching him with a quiet patience. In that moment, Ethan realized that life could change in the space of a single conversation. And though the future remained uncertain, he knew one thing with clarity: nothing would ever feel the same again.